Okay, good morning. Agid Chodesh. We have a lot to cover today. Just quickly, just to mention what we didn't have a chance yesterday. So yesterday we discussed that a person who is Isaac b'mitzvah, specifically we were discussing a chassan who is a special miyat. He's Isaac b'mitzvah, who's marrying a b'sula. He's Isaac b'mitzvah is going to be harder from a mitzvah. Why? Because it's not just being Isaac, but he also has tirda. Tirda the mitzvah. What's the tirda over here? So we discussed Rashi that he wants the Rashi and Sukkot wants to learn how to be. He can lead by liyos baki bedavar. Rashi here in Brachos, the lashon of Rashi here in Brachos was a little bit different. That he had a tirda. What was the tirda? He's mechashiv el esik besulim, which we assume was probably the same thing and not a steer between Rashi. And we discussed also the Tshuva of Ramesha that said that the person who wants to make sure that he has a certain knowledge of what goes on, that he can study doctor manuals, etc., before the chasana. But that's not the only shita. There also was the shita of the Rambam. The Rambam says that in Hilchos Kriya Shema, the Rambam says that the reason that the chasana would be potter would be because of the fact that his tirda would be Shemala Yimatzi Besulim. So those are two different reasons that would be relevant. However, Bizman Hazeh, Shulchan Aruch writes very clearly in Arachaim, Siman Ayin Halacha Gimel, that we do not say anymore about a chassan that is part from Kriya Shema. Right, Halavai, any of us should have the right requisite kavana for Kriya Shema. Nobody today has that kind of level of kavana, and nobody has. Maybe people still have tirda, maybe they don't. But given that nobody regularly has so much kavana, therefore we don't say that person will be potter. That's number one. Number two, we had said that in Machlekes of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, we paskin like Beis Hillel after the Baskel came out and Erev and Gimel, and there's no question anymore about this. And so therefore people acting like Reb Tarfon, people acting like Reb Eliezer ben Azariah, they are, as we mentioned yesterday, like Peretz Gedei, Shechem Nakash, and when I just said that, by the by, it's part of the way I understood the Gemara. I happened to see it was in the Rach as well. The Ben Chananel says the same exact lashon. So that was very exciting. If you look at the Rach, it is in the bottom of Yud Aleph and Aleph. He says, "What's the reason that you say such a line? He says because the first get is Shechem Nachash, same exact as we said yesterday." Okay. So the last point you just mentioned is that for all practical intents and purposes, that means that one is able to say Shema in any direction, whether one is prone, whether one is standing, sitting, lying, leaning, whatever, it's all fine. The only thing is one shouldn't be actually trying to take a certain position, fetal, sitting, standing, at the time of Shema, to be in accordance with Beis Shammai. That one is not allowed to do. But any position that one happens to find himself in, no problem. That is totally okay. And that, I think, basically covers off on the parsha that we discussed yesterday. Unfortunately, we didn't have a chance to do all the tests, but I would like to get all the tests in today, so we have a lot to do. Let's get moving. Says the Mishnah, we are on the bottom of Yom Aleph, Amud Aleph. The Mishnah tells us, in the morning we make two brachas. One, two brachas before the Shema and one after the Shema, right? The two brachas, we know you guys are very choshech, and the bracha of Rabba, and the bracha afterwards, right? The bracha of Emes V'Yatzev that goes all the way until Yisrael, until Gal Yisrael. That would be B'Shachar. B'Shachar Mevarshtayim L'Fanei B'Achas L'Acharel, U'Ba'erev Mevarshtayim L'Fanei U'Shtayim L'Acharel. Right, and in the evening we make two brachas in the morning, and two brachas. Two in the evening we make two brachas before the Shema, and two brachas after the Shema. Achas arucha v'achas kitzar. We're gonna have to come back to understanding what do you mean in the morning we're only making one bracha. What does that mean? We say one. What's the one bracha that we say? We say Gal Yisrael. Yes. And the evening, what does it mean? We say two. We sang the bracha of Gal Yisrael and the bracha of Hashkivenu. Hashkivenu was put in, and even though that's not doesn't sound like it's it sounds like that's a break between being Semach Gula to Tefillah. We said no, it's considered a Gula Richta, but we end up saying two brachas at night. So again, the Mishnah is telling us that in the morning we make two brachas before the Shema and one bracha after the Shema, and in the evening we make two brachas before the Shema and two brachas after the Shema. The two brachas after the Shema, Hashkivenu and Gal Yisrael, and it's not, as we say, a break. Fine. It continues the Mishnah. Achas arucha v'achas kitzar. Over here we have Machlokes Rashi Taisus. What does it mean? Rashi says achas arucha v'achas kitzar. Rashi says it's going on the two brachas that come after the Shema at night. And what are those two brachas? Emes Emuna and Ashkivenu. Those are the two brachas. Why one is considered kitzar and one is considered arucha? Again, we'll have to discuss that another time. But Taisus says no, that actually doesn't work. Taisus says. Perish Rashi, what does it mean that achas arucha v'achas katsara? He agrees that that the idea is we're talking about the brachas after Kriyas Shema of the evening. But v'tema frektes tashkivenu nami arucha harbe. What do you mean? It's a short bracha. One is long, one is short. Ashkivenu is also a long bracha. V'tedem is like chashav l'b'tesef t'badei katsaris. It's not considered hashkivenu as part of the brachas that are considered quote unquote short. Right, this is additions to the Ma'ariv that we don't say, but sometimes you can make the bracha Hashkivenu very long because you're adding in all these various things. So Taisus is saying, I don't understand how could you say achas arucha v'achas katsara? One is the Emes Emuna, that's the arucha, and Hashkivenu is the katsara. More than that, Taisus v'oid Emes Emuna pa'am shemakatzrim ba'ma'oid. Sometimes we make Emes Emuna really short. Why? According to the Mandama that says you don't say tzidus at night, so he makes the bracha of Emes Emuna like a one-liner. So you see that you could potentially make it and make it so short, it's way shorter than even Hashkivenu. So how could you say that achas arucha v'achas katsara, that achas arucha is Emes Emuna and achas katsara is Hashkivenu? Sometimes Emes Emuna is really short, and sometimes Hashkivenu is really long. So therefore says Taisvis, Rabbeinu Tam answers, we're talking about Emes Emuna, only that bracha. Achas arucha v'achas katsar, even though it doesn't really read really well, it sounds like one bracha is long, one bracha is short. Says Taisvis, no, read it as the whole thing is just talking about the bracha of Emes Emuna. Sometimes it's long and sometimes it's short. Ben Yar, Venero Ben Tam Lakol Kab Emes Emuna, Achas arucha v'achas katsar, Klama Ben Yarich, Ben Ba, Ben Yikatzer Ba, Kedlakaman. Whether you're making it a long Emes Emuna, whether you're making it a short Emes Emuna, that is what we are talking about. It's also about one thing. So therefore, that is the position of Taisus. So achas arucha v'achas katsar, and the machlokes Rashi Taisus. Rashi says it's going on Emes Emuna. That's the arucha, and katsar is hashkivenu. Says Taisus, no, arucha katsar is going on Emes Emuna, only Emes Emuna, and sometimes Emes Emuna is really long, sometimes Emes Emuna is short. Continues the Mishnah. This is the law of brachas. If you have a long bracha, you're not able to make it shorter. It's a short bracha, you don't make it long. If it has if it's Messiah with a bracha, right? If the end of the bracha has a bracha, then you're not able to skip that. If it doesn't have a bracha at the end, right? You don't have permission to add in an ending into the bracha. So now we have the Mishnah. The Mishnah tells us a bit about the Brachot Kriyas Shema, and you remember this because we discussed this in the beginning when we said, why are we talking about B'Shachar first? Why are we not talking about B'Arvis first? We said, once we're already talking about the meal of the Shachris, so we kept up with the meal of the Shachris, and then we come back to discussing about Arvis. And since we had before, we discussed in the Mishnah here, Testament base, discussed the Amsai Karna Shema B'Shachris. So we kept on going, and we had a little bit of an interlude here to discuss the different directions that a person says the Shema. And now we can keep on going with Shachris, and then we come back. Once we say B'Shachar V'Arshtayim L'Fanei Shtachas L'Chaveh, then we go back to V'Erev V'Arshtayim L'Fanei U'Shtayim L'Achaveh, right? And that is going to explain that Gemara that we saw in base, right? If you remember the very, very first daf, right? That was how we explained. Looking at the Gemara on daf base. Remember that listen to Aris Bereisha. That was the Gemara's answer. Tana Brachot Be'Arvis, Tana B'Shachris, Tana B'Shachris, Tana B'Shachris, Tana Mila de Arvis. That is bringing in now the whole first parak of brachas that we have done. Okay, continues the Gemara. My mevarech, right? What is this bracha that you're saying that you do two before by Shachris? You do two brachas before the Kriyas Shema by Shachris. My mevarech, what do you say? Amar Rav Yaakov, Amar Rav Oishia. Rav Yaakov says the name of Rav Oishia. And I should just mention, Rashi and Taisus both say over here that what it means that when you have a short bracha, they're not able to make it long. It means like brachas hamitzvos, brachas haperes, Don't make the brachas longer than they are. Whatever they are, they are. You don't say Baruch Hashem creates and add in like your own 16 different, like that's the bracha. That's it. Don't make it longer. So my Mavarech says the Gemara, what is the bracha that we are making before the Shema? What is the brachas? Amar Rabbi Yaakov, Amar Rabbi Oishia. So Rabbi Yaakov, the name of Rabbi Oishia says like this: Yetzer uvarei choshech. The bracha is based upon a pasuk in Yeshaya. The bracha is Yetzer uvarei choshech. For the Gemara, Vilema Yetzer uvarei noiga. Why are you saying that God creates the light and the dark? Say that God creates the light and He creates Noiga. Noiga is like the brightness. Why not say that? The Gemara says, no, I have to say it the way it's written. So the Gemara says, really? That's what you're bothered by. I'm looking at here at the Gish of the Bach. The Elamayata says the Gemara, the pasuk actually says in Yeshaya Oisa Shalom Uvarei Esakol Mika Amrina Kidachsev. You're telling me that what you're doing is based upon what it says in the pasuk. The pasuk doesn't say Yetzer Vari Noiga, so therefore you have to say Yetzer Vari Choshech. So then, what about the next words in the pasuk? The whole pasuk actually literally says Yetzer Vari Choshech. It says Shalem Uvayrei Ra. God creates evil, which is a massive topic we cannot get into now, unfortunately, but it is juicy. We cannot stop for this topic. It's a huge topic, but we won't be able to even touch it. And Yeshaya. In Pasuk in Yeshaya. So the Gemara says, "Elema Yotzer Arvari Noiga." We have to say it like it says in the Yeshaya. Elameata Fert Gemara. Oisa Shalom Uvayrei Esakol Mikar Minik Ketachsiv. You're saying Uvayrei Esakol. Are you saying it like it says in Pasuk in Yeshaya? No, you made up your own thing. So once you're making up your own thing, Elaksiv Rav Karidan Hakol Lishnam Alyu. What's the reason why you say Uvayrei Esakol? Because you don't like to say that God creates evil. It scares people in the morning when they hear before Shacharis, oh, the Rebbeinu Shalom created the evil. No, come on. How could it be? Makes you have big philosophical questions, theological questions. So we don't like that. We want to list them out. So therefore we changed it to Yetzer Hakol. Very nice. So instead of saying God created the dark, say that God created brightness. And that's also Lishna Ma'alya. So why not do that? Why not, in fact, do that? That's the Gemara's question. Elo Ma'rava, there must have been another reason. There must be another reason. It's not because we're trying to say what it says in puzzle, because we're not saying exactly what it says in puzzle. We changed part of it. So if we're changing part of it, then change everything. No, we don't want to change everything. So why not? So therefore, there must be a reason why we had to say Yetzer Vari Choshech and not change it to a Lishna Ma'alya and say Yetzer Vari Noiga. What is that reason? Says the Gemara. Elo Ma'rava, Kedela ask you, Midas Yom B'Layla, or Midas Laila B'Yom. There's an element that we would like during the day to discuss the midah of the night, and in the night to discuss the midah during the day. So what does that mean? Says the Gemara, Bishlama, midas laila b'yom. I understand that you want to have the midah of the night mentioned during the day, and that's why you say yetzer very choshech, because you have the night being mentioned by day. But where do you find the midah of the day being mentioned at night? So you see, even at night, you mention the day. So therefore, you are taking the midah of the yom at night and the midah of the night by day. That is the Gemara until there. Let's look at Rashi. The Gemara is going to then we're about to ask what the next bracha is. We'll see in a second. The ilu bracha di ishtabach. This is what I wanted to show you from this Rashi. The ilu bracha di ishtabach. Rashi's asking a question. Rashi's question is, what do you mean? You tell me you have two brachas before Kriyash Shema. Don't you have a third bracha? Don't we say the whole bracha of Yishtabach, right? Baruch Atah Hashem, right? We have in Yishtabach another bracha. What do you mean two before Shema? It's three before Shema. So Rashi explained, the bracha of Yishtabach einem in a minyan. The bracha of Yishtabach is not counted. It's not counted as bracha before Shema. Why? Shehi la'achar psukat zimra k'may birchas halel. Right? It is the ending of Psukat Zimra, the bracha of Yishtabach. The same like we're going to say today in Rosh Chodesh. After we say the Hallel, we have a bracha. That bracha is not a part of Hallel. It is a similar, by the way, to the bracha that we say by the Haggadah on Pesach. Right? We also finish off there with a bracha to be Messiah that as well. And if you ever notice, they have many shuls where they're davening before, they're davening before Nates, they're davening early. They're davening before Allah, so davening before Zman of Hanakas Tefillin. So everybody puts on tefillin when? By Yishtabach. This is not a part of the brachas of Kriyash Shema. It's a part of the brachas of Psukei the Zimra. Therefore, Therefore, we don't count it as a bracha before Kriya Shema, and that's why you only have 2 before Kriya Shema, not 3. Fine. Continues the Gemara. Now that we understand that the brachas of Kriya Shema before the first bracha of Kriya Shema before Shacharis, and now we want to understand what is the second bracha of Kriya Shema before Kriya Shema of Shacharis. What is the second one? V'idach mahi. What is the second bracha of Kriya Shema before Kriya Shema shel Shacharis that we say before the Shema? What is the second one? The bracha is the Avarabba. Are the Nusach Sfar people getting nervous yet? You should be. Right? It says Avarab. What about Avasailam? Well, you have to wait another minute. Rabbi Elazar told his son Rabbi Pedas, right? Rabbi Elazar was Rabbi Elazar ben Pedas. He told his son Pedas, right? They named their kids after the grandfather, maybe, or it could be his father passed away. I'm not sure. Either way, so he told his son Rabbi Pedas, what you should say when you're saying this bracha is Avarabba. Tanya Nami Hachi, and Imrim Avasailam, Avarabba. We have another brayso that says, you do not say Avasailam, you say Avarabba. And make that very clear, yes? But Rabbanon Amri Avasailam. Yes, but the Rabbanon disagree. They say, no, you say Avasailam. V'chein hu aimer v'ahavas olam avticha al kem shachticha chesed. The Pasuk tells in Yirmiyah, I have loved you forever, and therefore I have drawn you in. I've dragged you along with kindness. So, what do you see from here? What do you see from here? You have the rabbis who say you say Avas Rabba, and rabbis who say Avas Olam. Says Taisvis, Hilkach Tap Taisis Takinu Leim V'Shachas Avas Rabba Avas Olam. That's why we do it the way we do it. We want to be a Kaim Shneim. We want to make everybody happy. We're a nice religion. We try to keep everybody happy. Everybody has a different day. We try to do all of them. That's why davening takes so long. That's why so many things take so long. We have to keep everyone happy. Yeah. Says the Rev. No. Says the Rev. And this is the Nusach Sfar people can rely on, because the Nusach Ashkenaz people do like Taisus. And they say, in fact, in the morning you do Avarabba, and in the evening we do Avas Olam, and we can wax poetic about the reasons for that. However, that is not the understanding of the Rif. The Rif says, the Rif Lashon here and Ham based on the Dape Rif says the Rif we're passing like the Rabbanon, meaning we just say Avas Olam, and therefore there are those as far to say Avas Olam both in the morning and in the evening. Again, this Ashkenaz is going with Tosfos, who says he tried to do both. Okay, continues the Gemara. We are up to the where it says Yim Yalam and Aleph. So right there, about a third of the way down. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel Hishkim Lishnais. A person got up to learn in the middle of the night. I have to stop and just tell you, I have been laning for 30 years. I've accumulated a bunch of laning jokes, and I have to share one with you. It's our vart for the week. It's for next week. You don't often get a chance to correct. I mean, I should be clear. There are many people who think they correct. They don't even know how to correct. They don't know when to correct. Okay, we'll put that on the side. But there's once in the Chumash, we have to correct a Shvana versus Shvanach. One time. It happens to be a next week's parsha. There's also Haftar like that, but Haftar is not the same as the laning. But there's one time, which is weird. In next week's parsha, the pasuk is going to tell us, Vayikat Yaakov, what's the next word? I didn't hear it loud. Vayikat Yaakov. If you said Vayikat Yaakov Mishnasai, it means Yaakov got up from his sleeping. No, the Medrash says Yaakov, he didn't sleep for 14 years in Shem Ve'ever. He only slept, right, when he got there that night on that mountain. However, that would be absolutely correctable mistake, because that's not what the pasuk is telling you. Which one do you want to say? If he got up from his sleep because he never slept. So if you're going to say that he got up from his sleeping, you have to say Vayikatz Yaakov Mishin Nasai. If you say Vayikatz Yaakov Mish Nasai, Yaakov got up from where? His learning. Right? So what we want to say is that Yaakov being who learned for 14 years in Shem Ve'ever, and then what happened there? He got up from his learning? No. He got up from sleeping. You want to make a drush today. He didn't sleep for 14 years. Okay, whatever. We can put that on the side for the moment. But you absolutely have a correctable mistake if somebody reads it as Vayikatz Yaakov Mishnah. He does not say the Shvana. He doesn't actually say the Shva. It has to be Misha Nasai to tell you to sleep. So here we are not talking about somebody who's getting up from his learning. He's getting up from his sleeping to learn. Okay, so the Gemara says, what happens? Hishkim Lishna is the person's getting up in the morning to learn. He's like us. He's getting up before davening. He wants to learn. So until he says Kriya Shema, he has to say the bracha Birchas HaTorah. Mishakar Kriya Shema ain't tzarich levarach. But when he already said Kriya Shema, he doesn't have to say the Birchas HaTorah. Why? Shekvar nifta ba'ava rabba. Because he was already pater from saying the Birchas of Birchas HaTorah by saying Ava Rabba. That's the word from Yehuda Mar Shmuel. Fine. Let's look at Rashi. We have a great Rashi here and Tosfos. Says Rashi, Shekvar nifta ba'ava rabba, sheyesh ba me'ein birchas haTorah. In Ava Rabba, it has a little bit of birchas haTorah. Why? Because what does it say in there? V'sembli ben ulumad v'lalam lishma v'lasei sulukayim es kol divrei Talmud Torah secha b'ava. Right? That's what we're saying in there. We're saying in the bracha of Ava Rabba that we want the Torah to be learned by us, to be able to be understood by us, to be able to make Mekayim Zayin. So that is basically what the bracha of Birchas HaTorah is trying to do. So you get your Birchas HaTorah through Ava Rabba, and therefore, if when you woke up in the morning, you didn't yet say Shema, right? You're waking up in the middle of the night, you're waking up to learn. You didn't have a chance to say Shema, it's too early. So what do you say? Birchas HaTorah. If it's time for Shema, so you said Shema, so you said the Birchas Kriya Shema, obviously. So then you don't have to make the bracha of Birchas HaTorah. Good? Says Tosfos, big Tosfos here, and it's a great Tosfos. There's a lot of different applications. Yeah? Says Tosfos, Shekvar nifta ba'ava rabba ad hilchos leminol lekul. We're going to start the Gemara coming up soon. Says Birushalmi yesh hodar min Shekvar nifta ba'ava rabba v'hu sheshona al atar. Says the Yerushalmi, what does that mean that you are Yotze Zayin? Birchas HaTorah after you said after you said the bracha of Ava Rabba. What does that mean that you're Yotze Zayin? You're Yotze Zayin, you don't have to say bracha of Birchas HaTorah. That's if you did it al atar. That's if you did it right away, meaning you finished davening and you sat down to learn. Then you're Mekayim Zayin. The Birchas HaTorah through Ava Rabba, and you don't have to say it again. But if you didn't learn right away, then you would have to say Birchas HaTorah. Clear? That's what it sounds like from the Yerushalmi. V'nishal Rav Rabbeinu Yitzchak says Tosfos going anu she'ein anu leimdim miyad la'achar tfilas hashachar. Here you get some ephemera, you get some historical ephemera, right, about how they used to learn in those days. Says Tosfos that in those days they did not learn immediately after Shacharis. By us, we says we go to work, we get busy. We don't have a chance to learn until the middle of the day, so much later. So what about us? So why don't we say Birchas HaTorah? And from this Yerushalmi, it's mashma that you're Yotze Zayin with your bracha of Ava Rabba, if you learn it right away, and if you didn't, then you have to say the bracha of Birchas HaTorah later on. What it says, what it sounds like is that when you're doing Birchas HaTorah, you have to do some learning in order to be Yotze. So if you don't learn until much later in the day, then maybe you should have to say Birchas HaTorah. Yet we don't. So they're asking Rabbeinu Yitzchak, why don't we say Birchas HaTorah again? Why don't we do that? Saying Kriya Shema afterwards, that's part of the thing. Okay, fine. Okay, good. We got our answer. We're going to get there. You're jumping. Okay, so answer Tosfos. V'heishiv ri. Says the ri. Deloy kaimelan ka'isa Yerushalmi. Says the ri. We don't pass like this Yerushalmi. Hoil v'gamrinan shalanu loy amru. V'ein sarach la'alta lilmaid. Says Tosfos, we do not pass like this Yerushalmi. We pass like the Bavli. What did the Bavli say? The Bavli said very clearly that hishkim lishnas not shalekar kriya shema tzarech levarech. Mishakar kriya shema ain't tzarech levarech. Shekvar nifter ba'ava rabba. And it did not say anything about a limitation. It just said that once you say Ava Rabba, you're done. It's like Birchas HaTorah, you're good for the day. There's no mention here that it has to be done al atar, which means alter. There's no discussion. Once you said the Birchas of Kriya Shema, which means you said Ava Rabba, it's like you said Birchas HaTorah, you are good to go. So for Tosfos, it's special. It's about like Yerushalmi and Bavli. Once you say Birchas HaTorah, it's good for the day. You don't have to say it again, even if you don't learn for many hours. It's not because Tosfos is not saying here that you're Yotze Zayin with Shema. Tosfos is saying once you said the bracha is the bracha Torah, you said the bracha of Avarabba, you are good to go for the entirety of the day. It says that feel if Yerushalmi dafka Avarabba. So it says maybe this Yerushalmi is only about Avarabba. Maybe it wouldn't be saying the same thing about Berachas HaTorah. Maybe Avarabba is a weak version of Berachas HaTorah, so that's why you require learning right away. But if you actually had real Berachas HaTorah, maybe even the Yerushalmi would agree that it would work for the whole day. That says, "I feel if Yerushalmi dafka Avarabba, do I have an ikar bracha leberachas HaTorah? The ikar Avarabba lekriyas Shema nitken, right? What's the reason you say Avarabba? Not for Berachas HaTorah, it's for Berachas of Kriyas Shema. So you want to use it, you want to bootstrap it, you want to use it also for Berachas HaTorah, fine. But maybe the Yerushalmi is only saying it on that you have to say learning something after the bracha of Avarabba. But for regular Berachas HaTorah, maybe even the Yerushalmi would agree that it would work for you for the whole day. So it's not necessarily Machlokes Bavli Yerushalmi. It says maybe the Bavli and the Yerushalmi agree, and the Yerushalmi is only discussing a situation of your bracha Berachas HaTorah was being Yitzig event through Avarabba. But if it would be Yitzig event through Berachas HaTorah, it would have worked for the whole day. That's Tosfos' two options. So that's the, if you don't have any Asakadas, and you learned right away, Avarabba would work for you. But if you didn't say Avarabba, and you actually said the Berachas HaTorah, maybe the Sham would agree that it worked for you for the whole day. Fine. Now Tosfos continues. Avo berachas asher bachar banu uberachas lasik b'divrei Torah shein ikar leberachas HaTorah b'teres kol hayom. But the actual brachas, the berachas HaTorah of asher bachar banu and lasik b'divrei Torah, which we're going to see soon, those are the ikar berachas HaTorah. So that patterns you the whole day. Bim time afrek Tosfos. How's this different than sukkah? Every time you go on the sukkah, you have to make a bracha leishiv b'sukkah. You don't say one leishiv b'sukkah works for you for the whole day. But Berachas HaTorah say it works for you for the whole day. If you're not learning most of the day, it still works for you. What's the problem? What's the difference? It says Tosfos Yeshlam the Shani Torah she'enei miyayish daita the kol shah adam mechuyev l'mod d'chsev v'yitzav yom v'laylo v'havik ima yishur kol yom v'lay hefseg. You know, it's like a person has to understand that his whole life he has to be learning. Okay, he can't be learning all day. He has to work. He has to take care of his family. He has to die. He has to do a million things. So he's not learning. But where is he? He's always in learning. Even if he's not learning, he's always in learning. So therefore, since you never really miyayish daita from learning, and if you had free time, you would learn. Says Tosfos, that's why you don't have to make another bracha. Whereas by sukkah, you don't eat all day. You eat when you eat. And that's the only time that you eat. Therefore, you have to make a bracha of a new leisha b'sukkah each time you come in to eat in the sukkah. Is another question. Why doesn't you say a bracha of a special bracha when you go to sleep in the sukkah of lisham b'sukkah? I'm going to sleep now in the sukkah. The bracha of leisha is patis you on lishan. Says there's another possibility. Maybe you won't be able to fall asleep. I don't have that problem, so I don't really understand. But Tosfos says maybe you won't be able to fall asleep. Not everybody can fall asleep. Some insomniacs, and so they can make the bracha lishan b'sukkah, and they won't fall asleep, and it'll be a bracha levatala. This is a very important Rabbeinu Tam. When a person gets up in the middle of the night to learn, because the bracha of Berachas HaTorah that he said yesterday works into today. He doesn't have to make another Berachas HaTorah because he said it already yesterday. Right? You said Berachas HaTorah yesterday, and you got up early in the morning to learn today. Well, says Rabbeinu Tam, that should work. You don't have to make another Berachas HaTorah yet. Until you're ready to daven, and then you say your Berachas HaTorah. But you should be able to rely on the one from yesterday. That's how far it goes. You had a good night's sleep, you still don't have to say Berachas HaTorah, says Rabbeinu Tam. Says Lo Nehira, that's wrong. That's not correct. It says Tzarfatim, the French, were Nayeg Leimer Psukim and Berachas Kainim. V'gam El Devarim Shein Lam Shir. Tosfos now teaches you about additional aspects of Berachas HaTorah that we say. We say, and the Gemara is not going to discuss this, but this is later. This is from the French. The French added in the bracha Berachas Kainim, right? We say Baruch Hashem Yishmerecha Panam Melech V'Choneka, and we added in V'gam El Devarim Shein Lam Shir, She Mishnah, Ve'el Devarim Shein Lam Bereseim, She Brisa, Mimnei Yerushalmi. Why do we add in all these things? Because of the Yerushalmi, that we were afraid that the Yerushalmi required you to learn right away. So if you have to learn right away, you don't want to wait. You don't want to wait until after davening. You're not going to wait till Shema. You're not going to wait till anything else. You're not going to wait till even Karbanis, right? Which we have as part of it as learning, right? All that is learning. We don't want to wait that long. So in Berachas HaTorah itself, we add in learning. What's the learning? A few psukim from the Chumash, a Mishnah, a Brisa, and we get our learning right there in the middle of Birchas HaTorah. Of course, that's part of why we do it during Karbanis, but we get it even early. The French want to do it, not even wasting a second. Why? For this Yerushalmi that says Chaz Shem, and this is not just saying Avraham. This is for regular Birchas HaTorah. Not enough. We want to make sure we get the learning right away. So Mekayim Zayin, all the sheet is one last point. And Teresa concludes, you don't need to do it. Nevertheless, we still do it, right? Everyone does it. Okay, great. One point to mention about this Rabbeinu Tam, and this is relevant to halacha, and not if you went to sleep by night. But what happens if you went to bed during the day? You took a power nap, 15 minutes, and then you want to learn again. Do you have to make another Birchas Torah? No, we rely on this Rabbeinu Tam to say that Birchas Torah works for you for the whole day. Even if you want to sleep during the day, you still not Messiah class, you still want to learn, and therefore you do not have to say another Birchas Torah. Finish the Gemara. Amar Rav Huna. So we're up to the Gemara now says, Amar Rav Huna lemikra tzarich levarich, u'lemidashein tzarich levarich. Huna says that when it comes to making the bracha Birchas Torah, you have to do it for Tanakh, but for studying Medrash, you don't have to make a bracha Birchas Torah. Rabbi Amar lemikra lemidash tzarich levarich. Rabbi says no, you do have to say the bracha Birchas Torah both for Mikra and for Medrash, but lemishnei tzarich levarich. You don't have to make the bracha Birchas Torah for Mishnah. Rabbi Yechon says you don't have to make the bracha of Birchas Torah for Talmud, and this is the man who is behind the Talmud Yerushalmi. Says you don't have to make a bracha Birchas Torah when you study Talmud. So you have to make a bracha Birchas Torah for studying the Talmud, and the proof of that is the Amar Rav Chia bar Ashi. Didn't say again have a kamin and kamid Rav. He says that I saw Rav many times. These are all people who were students of Rav. We just mentioned, as is pointed out. So didn't say have a community to Rav. I saw many times that Rav, Rav would teach the Sifra, so which is a medrash. Rav would make wash his hands, and he would make a bracha. The bracha of here is not on Tzadayim, it's the bracha of Birchas HaTorah. So therefore, we say we do paskin like Rava. You have to make a bracha of Birchas HaTorah on everything. Rashi says we have to go to the Rashi after the Gemara Tzarich Levarach. Rashi says, so who ikar Torah? The ikar of Torah is the Gemara Shemimeno Yotza Hara. Right from there we get the Hara. That's why we know how to paskin. Gemara Hanus first time. Our Mishnah explains the Mishnah to Mishnah. That is absolutely required, like the Gemara says in Sait the Chavbeis. The Gemara tells us someone who's pasking from the Mishnah is Havri Mitzem Avali on the people who destroy the world who try to be pasking from the Mishnah, and you can't do that. Okay, so we need the Gemara. So we end up. When do you have to say Birchas HaTorah? For any type of learning. Today we say Birchas HaTorah as part of our regular ways of davening, but actually, when a person gets up in the morning, if a person has the ability to do so, he should be at home. He says Netilas Yadayim, he says it's Birchas HaTorah. And that is part of the regular way a person wakes up, and that works for the entirety of the day, as we have said, and it works even if a person just is going to study Gemara and not study anything else. Of course, you would need to say Birchas HaTorah. Any learning requires Birchas HaTorah, but as I say, it's part of davening today that people end up saying it regardless, and all of learning will be included inside it. You're supposed to say in the first part of the day when you're davening. And if a person gets up in the morning and they have the ability to be or sunlight. No, it's after. No. You could, yeah. If you get up early, if you get up in the middle of the night, you can say Birchas HaTorah then, and that will be for your new day. If that's when you're getting up, yeah. If you're getting up and going back to sleep, you don't say Birchas HaTorah. You go back to bed. Yeah, absolutely. You're required to say Birchas HaTorah before you learn. Okay, and we don't rely on this Rabbeinu Tam for that, right? Rabbeinu Tam says you don't have to, but we do rely on the Rabbeinu Tam that if you go to sleep during the day, you don't have to say another Birchas HaTorah. Okay, continues the Gemara. All right, we are at the dot. There's a single dot about halfway down the page. Yes, the Gemara says, "My mavarch." What is the bracha of Birchas HaTorah? Dam Rav Yehuda Mar Shmuel. Asher Gilishonu and Tzveisa v'tzivanu la'asek b'divrei Torah. Right, the Rif has a different gear. So the Rif says al divrei Torah, but it's so much juicier. La'asek b'divrei Torah, right? To be osek in Torah, to have an asek in Torah. Rabbi Yochanan Stein B'Hachi. Rabbi Yochanan added, it wasn't simply enough just to say la'asek b'divrei Torah. Right, Asher Gilishonu and Tzveisa v'tzivanu la'asek b'divrei Torah. It wasn't enough. Rabbi Yochanan added another part. Ha, Reb Na Hashem l'kinas divrei Torah s'mafinu. Make the Torah sweet in our mouths, but fear Am Chol Yisrael, in the mouths of all the Jewish people. Get a bit of a different gift than what we have, but basically that learning Torah should be sweet by us, by our kids, and all the generations. All of Klal Yisrael should appreciate the Torah. And he would conclude, Baruch Hashem, Hashem will teach his Torah to all the Jewish people. Rav Hamnuna says you make the Baruch Hashem Baruch Harbanu as well. The Baruch Hashem Baruch Harbanu. Hashem chose us from among the nations and he gave us the Torah. So the Gemara says that we like the bracha of Rav Hamnuna. You have to look at the Gersa, the way the Gemara has it without the star. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Hamnuna, Zui Mu'ulash of brachas. Rav Hamnuna is saying about his own bracha. This my name is the best. Okay, but the Gersa of the Rif is Vahad, the Rav Hamnuna, right? You have to add in this. There's the Stam of the Talmud is adding in that this bracha of Rav Hamnuna is Mu'ulash of brachas, the best one. Asher bracha banu kol am nasalanos Torah. So therefore, Hilgach lemrinu lekul. Therefore, we have to say. We end up saying all of them, right? We say Asher B'Chabano, Sivan last time we did Beiseira, V'Harevna, and we pointed out the Tzarfatim. We say V'Dabashem Moshe Lemar. We say the bracha of Brachas Kayanim. All we do everything. One thing I have to mention is that then they bring down in my side of the Gemara. They bring down in the Mitzvah of Rashi the Sefer Or, which is one of the books that came out of Rashi's school, and they ask a fundamental question: why is it that when a person gets up to make an aliyah, he has to make the bracha Asher Bracha Banu Kolam, which is part of Berachas Torah? You already said Berachas Torah in the morning. If you already said Berachas Torah in the morning, it shouldn't be it should be the whole day. You don't have to say Berachas Torah every time. We already just made a whole long taisa, so you don't have to do it. So why are you doing when you're going up to get the aliyah? The Rashi answers in Sefer Ora because getting an aliyah is not like learning Torah. When you're getting up to get an aliyah, that's like tefillin, that's like mezuzah, it's like a tzitzis, it's like just another mitzvah. Why? Because you're doing it because Ezra's takana that we have to learn, and that's why you're doing it. So you're doing it to make a mitzvah, not to learn Torah, and that's why you make a special bracha on it as it's a separate mitzvah. Continues the Gemara. We are now at the two dots. Tanan Hasam. We got a few minutes left. Let's try to make it. Tanan Hasam Amar Mamamuna. The skan. Rashi explains the skan of the kohanim, the assistant to the kohen gadol would say, Baruch Hu bracha achas. Right, we're talking here in the times of Beis Hamikdash when people are very busy with all the karbanos, they have to run around doing all their stuff, and they would get up very, very early to do everything, and that's why you can't be to shema with them. We already discussed that before because they're doing everything super early. So the Memuna would tell the Skan, would tell the Kohen, this is what you got to do. Baruch Hu bracha achas, ve'im baruch hu. They would say, make one bracha, and they would make a bracha. The Korah Seres Adibris, Shema, Vayam Shemaya. Vayomer ubarachas amgim brachas. They bless the people 3 brachas. Emes v'yatziv va'avoda. That's what it say. Ubarachas kohanim. Rashi and Tosfos seem to indicate. I should say Rashi is not so 100% clear. Rashi says the ubarachas kohanim, the ubarachas am. They will bless the people. Tosfos says it's not duchening. The bottom Tosfos says ubarachas kohanim. It's clearly not duchening. Because they could only duchen after the Aktar Seimurim, which will be later. So this is sort of just saying it over. Look at the last words of the Torah. They would say it without actually lifting up the hands. They would just say out the bracha of Berachas Kohanim. They would say it the way we do it, right? They wouldn't actually lift up the hands. Says that's how they did it. And remember, they're doing this all in a rush, in a big hurry, in order to get the Avodah going. So Shabbos Masifin. Bracha achas l'mishmar yitzid. Given that the mishmars were changed on Shabbos, so they made an additional bracha on Shabbos. This is in the morning when the kahanim. We're talking here in the very early morning when the kahanim are preparing the carbon tamid and they have to bring everything on the mizbeach and they're getting ready for the day. That's when this would all take. This is all in Mishnah and Tamid. You can look there in the Mishnah and Tamid. Discusses all of this. So the Gemara says. My bracha achas. You said that on Shabbos that they would make an extra bracha. What is this extra bracha they make? That's why we're bringing down this Gemara and Talmud. We don't need this is not relevant for our topic, but it's relevant for this one point. Because on Shabbos they would make an additional bracha for the bracha of the mishmar. I'm sorry. The Mamuna would say to them, bracha baruch hu bracha achas. We make one bracha, and we want to know what is this bracha achas that they made the bracha. The Masifim bracha for the Mishmar Yotze on Shabbos is a separate bracha. We're talking about the bracha achas that they would make before the Shema. What is the bracha achas that they said? Says the Gemara, Ki hada Rabbi Abba v'Rabbi Yossi bar Abba iklo lahu asra. The Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Yossi bar Abba came to a town. Boy mina my bracha achas lehav biyadayu. They didn't know what was the bracha achas that they had to make before the Shema. In other words, which one is it? Is it Yotze Or, right, or is it Abba Rabba? They didn't know. The Asi Shalayla Rav Masna lehav biyadayu. They asked Rav Masna. He didn't know. He said, they asked Rabbi Yehuda, and he said, this is what Shmuel said. Avarabba, the bracha that they said was Avarabba. It wasn't Yitzhar, it was Avarabba. Rav Zvika, Rav Ami, Rav Shimon Lakish, Yitzhar. But Rav Zvika says no. He says the bracha was Yitzhar. Ki also Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef, when Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef came to Eretz Yisrael, came to Bavel, Amar Hadi Rav Zvika, La Beferish Idmar, El Mechala Idmar. He said, well, Rav Zvika said, the name of Rav Shlakish wasn't Beferish, it was Michlal. Remember, we just had this Gemara, right? Remember on Tes Amud Aleph, I told you that there's 4 Lashonos in Shas about the Kiyasas, right? Kiyasa, right? We have by Rav Dimi, Kiyasa by Ravin, Kiyasa by Yitzchak by Yosef, and Kiyasa by Shmuel by Yehuda. And you remember there on the Gemara at the beginning of Tes Amud Aleph, 4 lines down, 5 lines down from the top, the Gemara said, Kiyasa Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Hader Rav Achav Rabbi Chanina, Amar Rabbi Shuman Levi, Lav Beferish Itmar, Ela Mechlala Itmar. So mamash the same exact lashon you have over here, the different topic, but the same idea that he was clarifying that what was said was not said clearly. In any event, what is the Gemara saying over here? So Rabbi Yisrael Yosef says that this, the Zerika said in the name of Rish Lakish, that the bracha that they said was Yitzhar and not Avarabba. He didn't say it clearly, but he said it in a way that you could show you what he meant. So what did he actually say? What Rish Lakish had said was on the basis of this Mishnah in Talmud, Rish Lakish learned out that brachas and Ma'akiv one from the other. If you say that the bracha that they were saying was Yitzhar, have Amri, Hainu, the brachas and Ma'akiv Amri Avarabba. So that's how you'll be able to tell that if he said the bracha of Yitzhar, it was not Ma'akiv. If he didn't say the bracha of Avarabba, that would make sense. But if the bracha that they said was the bracha of Avarabba, have Amri my brachas in Ma'akiv what would be the proof to say that the brachas and Ma'akiv one from the other? Dilma Haidlai Amri Yitzhar, Mishum Dlai Motasman Yitzhar. Maybe the reason that you're not saying the bracha around the top of Yud Beis, what's the reason why you're not saying the bracha of Yitzhar is because of the fact that it's not yet time for Yitzhar. So you wouldn't be able to prove from the fact that you're saying the bracha of Avarabba that it is that the brachas are not ma'akiv, because simply speaking, Yitzhar was not the time for it. But they did it so early that it was not yet the time for Yitzhar. That's the Gemara. Therefore, it has to be that what they said was Yitzhar and not Avarabba. That's the Gemara's thinking at this stage. But they would have said Yitzhar had been the right time. So when he said bracha achas, it was only because it wasn't yet the zman of Yitzhar. That's why he said bless the one blessing, which would be Avarabba. So there wouldn't be a proof. But if you say that it has to be Yitzhar that he said, so then you have a proof that brachas are not ma'akiv. But if the bracha was Avarabba, then you wouldn't have a proof that brachas are not ma'akiv, because it could have been that it wasn't yet the time. So again, this is where Zerika is saying in the name of Rish Lakish that what Rish Lakish said was not beferish. He didn't say it was beferish Yitzhar. He said mechlal, because he said what you see from this idea of bracha achas, the Mishnah in Talmud was that brachas are not ma'akiv zu as zu, and that is only true if you say that the bracha that they said was Yitzhar, but it wouldn't be true if the bracha that they said was Avarabba. Says the Gemara, so what's the problem if you say that you learn it out mechlal? It's weak that you're learning it out mechlal, then it's Yitzhar. Says the Gemara, yeah. If you're just learning out generally, but you don't have a specific statement from Rish Lakish that he said that lo'elam Avarabba have Amri, then you could say that really maybe what they said is Avarabba, the chimat is man Yitzhar have Amri lay, and they would have said Yitzhar had it been the right time. Umay brachas im akvazu azu. So what then would Rish Lakish mean when he says brachas im akvazu azu? It will be say the brachas that you could say the brachas out of order. So in other words, it comes out then the way the Gemara is learning is that since Rish Lakish didn't say beferish Yitzhar and you only said mechlal, so you could actually say maybe it meant Avarabba. And what does it mean brachas in akvazu azu? We said maybe you can't prove anything because maybe it's not the time for Yitzhar. No, it's proving you something. The proof is that brachas and ma'akiv zu as zu in relation to say the brachas. You could say Avarabba, even though that's not the right order of the brachas for Kriyat Shema. Nevertheless, it would still be okay, and that would be what we would be teaching. And therefore, what we end up with is we have two opinions on what that bracha was. Either it was Yitzhar or it was Avarabba. And we have to conclude over here. Have a wonderful Chodesh, a good Shabbos.